So thank you all for joining us. I hope you're as excited about this panel as I am. I'm probably going to be fangirling this whole time because we have three amazing, esteemed women journalists here with us. And I'm very excited to dig into what they can teach us about some of the power and scandals that we've seen across the world, and also about journalism and investigative journalism. So let's start with what the panel is called, Epstein and the Epstein Files. And Anupreeta has written a book about Bill Gates, where she also digs in quite heavily into his relationship with Epstein. And so, Anupreeta, I want to ask you a little bit about what you learned about Epstein, what you learned about Epstein's relationship with Gates, and especially for people in the audience who don't maybe know much about Epstein, if you can explain what has happened with that scandal so far.
So, Jeffrey Epstein, for those of you who don't know, was a convicted sex offender who died by suicide in 2019 in a New York prison. And he had had a whole record of exerting a lot of influence on very wealthy men. And there were a lot of accusations, a lot of unproven theories. And more recently, you've had, there's a whole background that I'm not going to go into, but I think the overall takeaway with Epstein is that he was an influence peddler and he was someone who held secrets of other powerful men and used them to his advantage. And Bill Gates was one of those people who he tried to cultivate, had a relationship with, and that ended at some point. But that's who he was. I think you could use stronger words for him, but maybe, yeah.
Anita, you have also done a lot of work uncovering various scandals in India. And you've looked at sex scandals in ashrams, land grabs by mafia, spurious liquor tragedies. Do you see any parallels, any juxtapositions between Epstein or other scandals in America and some of what you've uncovered here in India?
You know, the Christian religion, we have the Holy Trinity, which is Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. In real life, we have unholy Trinity, money, sex, power. This is the same whether it's Epstein out there or whether it is some ashram in India. In fact, one of the things that I've covered a lot is sex and exploitation in ashrams. Supposed to be a holy place, but you have these young girls brought to the godman, is always a godman, and is brought to the godman by the parents and literally laid at the feet of the godman, who then sexually exploits her. This is in the full knowledge of the ashram, the knowledge of the parents, because of superstition. The parents believe that the daughter is going to be blessed, especially because she's going to have sex with the godman. And the whole society around thinks this is an honor bestowed on the girl. Now, the ashrams get a lot of donations. So what the godman does is after the girl is brought into the ashram for his sexual pleasure, what he does is to give some money to the parents of the girl. So they feel, oh, we have now, see, God has given us some blessings, our godman has given us blessings. And then what happens is that this exploitation becomes really intense. Why does this happen? On the one hand, is the girl and the parents thinking that this is going to bring them a lot of benefits from God. On the other hand, there is superstition on the part of the godmen. And that is why this is a scandal that recurs almost every 4 or 5 years in India. And the superstition among the godmen is that if they have sex with a young girl, like 14, 15 years old, they will get the sexual energy and the sexual power to rule over other people. Now, they claim this is some tantric sex or whatever, but this is something that all these godmen feel they derive more power out of sexual contact with a young girl. This is no different from what is happening with Epstein. This is something that we see across the world, that middle-aged men have this desire. Their energy is fading, their vitality is fading. So then they believe very conveniently that exploit a young girl and they will get all the freshness and the youth of that young girl. So whether it is Epstein or whether it's some godmen here, this is a universal pattern.
And one of the things that godmen and people in power often do is create curated public images and myths around them. And Chitra, in your book, you have countries that have these public images, like Sweden and Switzerland. And you, in your book, also Chitra's book here, which I highly recommend, is a great personal story of how she uncovered the Bofors scam. So how important was it to you, and how do you manage to break some of these myths that people in power create? You know, how do you manage to do that? And what did you learn about how these myths and curated public images, how are they created?
Yeah. First of all, I'd like to say that this is an entire women's panel. So, long live, kudos to women who sort of sit and uncover scandals, and we are the ones who do all the good work. So a round of applause for us, please. Thank you. I was talking to an arms dealer. One of the sources in my book is an arms dealer that I call Ka, like, the snake in the Jungle Book. I never knew if he was a good person or a bad person, but for all practical reasons, he was good to me. Probably because he thought I was stupid or whatever. But he gave me such a lot of information, including telling me that it's very difficult to bribe women. For the simple reason that they have jobs to do after their jobs in the newsroom. They go home, they have to raise children, and then they have to, so this whole thing about money, sex, and power, it's incredible how we've never had, like the Epstein Files, we've never had hundreds of women involved. Like, okay, his friend, what was her name? The lady who used to get girls for him.
Oh,
Ghislaine Maxwell. She was the one going around getting him. But look at that whole Lolita complex, so the whole thing about Lolita. Men wanting to sleep with young women. All kinds of women who have not attained puberty. So this is something that, of course, it didn't come up directly with me and Bofors. I didn't have to deal with it. But I just wanted to bring in what is happening right now in Switzerland. There's a famous Davos meeting. I suppose you all know that Davos brings together all the high and mighty of the world. 2 points, and then I'll stop. 2 points. One point is that I was looking at all the people who were speaking in Davos, and then so many of them were on the Epstein Files. So many of them speaking, and nobody raised it. So, and the second point is that every time the Davos meets, there are articles in the Swiss global media about increased sex workers. So there's something to be said about money, sex, and power. But, none of the men in the Epstein Files have denied anything, and that is scary. That, to me, is honestly scary, despite the very serious allegations.
You were talking about how these people preserve their myth, their, aura or whatever. Their supporters are the ones who will go to any length to hide, to silence. So even in the Godman situation, it was the followers who would, when cases were finally filed, they would silence the witnesses. They would kill, even to the extent of killing. And I think that is something that we see also in the Epstein Files, that it is his followers around who go to great extents to keep up the image. It's not he himself. He's gone even now, but this is the thing, that the people around can go to extreme lengths of murder and violence to protect this image when it is beginning to crumble, when it's crumbling.
I also did want to talk about this money, sex, and power, which is wonderful way is a terrible way to say it, but it's a wonderful and very appropriate way to describe this whole kind of nexus of very rich, influential men who are preying on young, underage women, where there's a completely unequal relationship, and the agents that allow, who are complicit in this and allow for this to perpetuate. And I do think that the idea of reputation, people in power will go to any lengths to protect their reputation, right? Philanthropy is one way. They hire dozens, they have armies of people who manage their brands. They will put their name on a hospital, on whatever else. They will fund endowments, universities. And so these are some ways in which people seek to protect their reputation. But with Epstein, and it is true that it's been hard to find someone who hit back and said that, no, that's not true. I mean, they've just gone quiet. Some have come out and attacked the media, but it's really been a weak response, which just tells you how true Epstein's world was, and probably still is. There will be another Epstein, I'm sure, in some part of the world someday.
Yeah.
Can I keep your phone closer?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a point. Sorry, thank you. I wanted to make a point about these godmen that Anita had raised. I co-founded a website called the News Minute, and we're always in trouble. I think journalists should always be in trouble. Otherwise, they're not journalists. So we've reported on these godmen because there are quite a few around Karnataka. And one of them called Nityananda, I don't know if you know of this guy who sort of thinks he has a kingdom of Akasha. He has a lot of these, this is exactly what happens. They are women, young girls are given to him like some kind of an offering by parents. And they think it's got to do with male virility or male whatever. But, this is exactly what happened in the Epstein Files. I'm just so glad you made that connection. Because this is power, money, sex, and power. That's all it is. It comes round and round to that.
And maybe, Anupreeta, you can tell us a little bit about what I found fascinating in the book is Bill Gates' PR machinery that especially kicks in once the government starts clamping down. He's facing pushback from Congress. And what's unique about that world that you dig into, I think, is the myths around being a nerd. There's obviously philanthropy there, which is similar to other actors who are trying to create these myths, but also this theories that are created around doing good in the world, trying to change the world, that Silicon Valley is going to fix all the problems in the world. So what are the myths underlying how Bill Gates sort of became the pioneer almost in the way that a lot of billionaires now create myths around them, especially in technology? What are aspects about that myth building in that world?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there are elements of truth to the Bill Gates story in terms of the image building. He is a computer nerd. I mean, he did change the way we think about personal computing. He did create a market for software, and those things you don't take away from him. But what I think, and he was this, dorky, disheveled guy who had dandruff on his shoulders and worked, and it's like really, I mean, it's true, and then, chewed on his glasses and just about rocked back and forth, just about every kind of oddball behavior that has since become identified with who the nerd is. When you think about Sheldon in The Big Bang Theory, or when you think about, even Facebook, Sergey Brin and Google, and then, you had Mark Zuckerberg, this whole idea that you're this coder, this guy who's sitting in a basement or a garage somewhere, has become a myth that gets amplified. And for Gates, I think what happened was when Microsoft was under scrutiny and the US government slapped an antitrust case on him, his team, the people at Microsoft, realized that they needed to give a different shape to Gates's public image. They couldn't he was not helping the man he was, the nerdy, and he was also very mercurial, could be very arrogant, could talk down to people, didn't perform well in front of, when he was providing testimony. So I think, he moved to philanthropy, which is almost like an image laundering thing. Philanthropy can be good, it can be bad, but what it does for you is it's an immediate image change. So I think that was a quick switch that his PR team made. And as he became a more and more influential and famous philanthropist, his brand became very important to the kind of work he did. The more you kind of show that this is a guy who is using his billions only to uplift and improve the quality of human life in the poorest parts of the world, the more of a savior and saint you are, and that takes a lot of work to sustain, and that could include basically building having an entire media army who writes in a certain way, like who messages in a certain way, and all of it aimed at making this guy seem like this accessible, dorky, nerdy tech entrepreneur who's only doing good. It's not organic. It's completely made up and strategically placed in front of different audiences when there's a need for it.
Yeah. One of the things I think all of us as journalists have come across in this reporting is, as much as all of this is true, this world of power and scandal and sex, we also come across conspiracy theories. Whether it's QAnon in America, there are parallel theories. And in Chitra's book, she comes across a false lead of Amitabh Bachchan being involved in the Bofors scam. I want you to tell us a little bit about that fine line between what is real in these worlds and when does it blur into even further myths, real myths, conspiracies, false leads. There's many people in India who believe Bollywood is, and how do we decipher what's real and what's not real in that? How did you do that as a journalist?
In my case, I was following this Bofors story, and then the Indians at one point, and this is after the government of India fell, after Rajiv Gandhi fell, there was an investigative team from India that came to Switzerland. And so I was investigating 5 accounts, and I had documentary evidence to say money had been paid into 5 accounts. So then this investigative team comes to Switzerland in the morning, and in the evening, they say, we have found a 6th account. 6th account mil gaya, 6th account. We found a 6th account. So, there were 2 problems for me. One, and the 6th account was linked to Amitabh Bachchan. So my problem was twofold. One, how did they get the 6th account in 8 hours that there was in Switzerland, when I had been working and toiling for almost 2 years trying to find out if there were any links to Indians and others. And then that too to Amitabh Bachchan. Amitabh Bachchan, as you know, everyone here knows Amitabh Bachchan. So my problem was, had I missed the biggest story, had I missed the biggest story of my own story. So I was petrified, like, good heavens, Chitra, what on earth? So I started calling all my sources. In the meantime, the story had been planted in the Indian media. So next morning, everyone is writing about the 6th account story, except me. And I'm denying this. I'm saying I don't have any evidence of Amitabh Bachchan being involved. What happens? Lo and behold, an entire slew of articles is written about me and Mr. Amitabh Bachchan and I being in a relationship. Yeah. So can you imagine? Thank God it was Amitabh Bachchan and not some sleazy arms dealer. Yeah. And, my husband, thanks to him, we had a laugh. But it hurts you that, can you imagine the power? She made the point that people would go to any extent to defend themselves. So you have people in the government, they destroyed the man. Amitabh Bachchan was completely destroyed. He had to run from pillar to post. So he showed up at home. Should I speak about it? Would that interest you? So
Yeah, I'm sure people are interested.
Yeah, so-
I was interested. It was great.
So I have a baby and I'm nursing him. And then my husband is on the phone. So someone calls from India and says, spells the name and says, so I'm hearing my husband, it says BACH. So he says, yes, CH. And then that person must have said CH. So my husband shouts, saying, I have noted CH. It can't be CH. And I said, my good heavens, Bachchan, and I go running with my baby to the phone and I'm saying, what are you writing? So he wrote Bachchan. Then Mr. Bachchan wants to meet me. And then he comes home, and here I am. I'm really tongue-tied. I'm quite a chatterbox. So, well, I don't talk about sources, but So here is this gentleman, tall, extremely well-dressed, and I don't know what to say. And I'm saying, let's not talk about Bofors. I want to sing. I pretend I can sing. So I sing, I don't want to talk about Bofors. I want to talk about Harivansh Rai Bachchan. But to make the point that even the most powerful people in India plant stories. They don't have to plant, but then they do it just for fun. There was no need to say bad things about me because supposedly this was a government which was in my favor, remember? Because it was VP Singh's people. So they were planting stories about me to make the point that they would also go to any extent for personal gain. So VP Singh had an election to win, by-election or something. So he planted a story about me against Amitabh Bachchan. What the connection was, I didn't know. But they will go to any extent to protect themselves. Yeah.
Anupreeta, why do these conspiracy theories come about? I think one of the things in your book is researchers show that as inequality has increased over history, conspiracy theories also seem to increase, and America is the land of conspiracy theories. Why do these things come about? And how do you deal with sifting through conspiracy versus truth?
With conspiracy theories, what I've found just talking to people and also my own observations is that when you have a polarized society or when inequality is very high, people look for reasons to try to fill in that gap, that why is someone so rich and why am I so poor, or why are things not going the way they should? Oh, there's some policy somewhere someone created, in secret that then, became the reason why immigration policy in the US, just to make something up, right? But it's usually the seed of something that was thought up or promoted. There's a kernel of truth that then feeds on itself and becomes an explanation that acquires plausibility, especially in the age of social media, when you just have so much more amplification so quickly. They just take on a life of their own, these theories. And so I think in moments of polarization, in moments of deep inequality, which have both been the case, at least speaking from a US perspective, that has definitely has provided a lot of grist for the mill. I will also say, coming back to Gates on one thing, just to give you an example, there was a conspiracy theory that Gates was trying to basically put a chip into every person through the COVID vaccine, which his foundation was supporting one of the COVID vaccines. And there was a little tiny bit of, not truth, but the information came from the fact that MIT had done a small survey on whether it was feasible to put a microchip where that could, instead of, remember we carried around those vaccine cards, so could that be done on a microchip? But that then it deformed, it moved and morphed and became this thing where Bill Gates was a big villain in this case, just trying to gain everyone's information. And that's where it also fed and bled, bled into his Microsoft tech background. So, you're looking at tech, you're looking at COVID vaccine, which a lot of people distrusted. And then you're kind of blending it all to create this like grand unifying theory of what must be going on, because the pandemic was hard for a lot of people, and the vaccine, as I said, was just something that a lot of people still don't trust.
Yeah, yeah. And talking of conspiracy theories, I have not been in touch with him. There's a former Swedish diplomat who is convinced that the Bofors story I worked on is somehow linked to the murder of Olof Palme. So he's going round and round. He's done anything and everything on earth to try to speak to me. So, and he thinks now that the Italian mafia is involved and the South African government is involved. Now, here is the issue. The people I have spoken to about him say his research is good. He's done good research. But then he flips. Where he flips is this confirmation bias. Now, you spoke about it. Because he's convinced that the murder of Olof Palme is somewhere linked to the arms industry, he's trying to find evidence to confirm his story. So that's, I wanted to say that about conspiracy theories. Yeah.
The other thing that links all of your work is the reoccurring cycle. So, Anupreeta, there's now a new version of Bill Gates, and you talk about how Zuckerberg got advice from Bill Gates. Chitra, it was one of the most fascinating things about the Bofors scandal is that we have not opened the documents to this day. They're sitting closed in the CBI. Anita, you said that these godmen and ashram scandals continue. You wrote several stories again and again and again. How do you maintain hope that your work is worth it, that it has impact, when the honest truth is that the world of powerful, often men, has become more consolidated, and these themes have repeated themselves over history, and that sometimes you can write the same story 10 years later? How do you still maintain hope and faith in this profession?
Well, I can give you an example of the liquor corruption that happened in Vipin in Kerala. And it was 1982. And it was a massive scandal because after the Onam celebrations, the people of Vipin bought arak from government licensed shops and drank it, and they died. They were crippled. They were blinded because it was all spurious liquor. So I was in Madras those days, Chennai, and I came down to write this investigative report, and it took 1 week, and then after that 1 month to find out how exactly could something like this happen. I nailed it. Everything I brought out very clear because it was, as we Indians love to call it, nexus, the connection between the politicians, the excise officials, and the liquor barons, abkari contractors. Everything was clearly laid out, and so that became a big issue, all India issue. There were arrests made, there were reforms done, and everybody was happy, and I was so excited that this is the power of journalism and, all the rest of it. 20 years, and then everything was settled at that point. 20 years later, when I'm writing my book, the same scandal breaks out, the exact same modus operandi. What was the point? And the first time when I wrote that and I exposed all these liquor barons, even my parents had to live under police protection. No. I had to live under police protection. All that, the risk that I took, what good was it when again the same scandal erupts in Kerala and people die? So I have often questioned myself, because this is not the one story. So many of my stories, the same thing has happened many years later. So what is the point? I mean, it's not easy for us to be doing all this because we are risking our lives. We are risking our parents' lives, our sons' lives. Why are we doing this if this is going to keep, repeating itself? So yes, there are moments when I've questioned myself, the worth as a journalist, the pointlessness of it, and yet we can't stop it. That's our DNA. We cannot give up. We will keep going. And now, when I've reached this age, I feel proud that there are enough young journalists
Yes.
who are taking it forward. So this is the whole point of hope. Hope is not, we all have to be hopeful. But do we see hope right now? No, we don't. But hope is a multi-generational thing. It takes time. It's not sometimes this generation, maybe it's the next generation that actually benefits. So we keep plodding. It doesn't matter beyond a point. We get angry, we get frustrated, we get desperate. But at the end of the day, we just go back and carry on.
Can I come in there? I have to disagree a little with you. I disagree a little with you. I hope you'll bear with me. I am very hopeful. Two reasons. One, look at the number of people listening to us. So a round of applause to the people who have come and who have come to listen to us. Secondly, I have co-founded a website called the News Minute. And it's, we cover the South. Now, if you had asked me this question, say, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, what is the point? I would have said maybe. But today, I think there's a tide in Indian journalism. I think that it's shifted. I think people are hitting back. There's News Laundry, there's the News Minute, there's Scroll. There are so many, and this is just the English language. There's just something is happening. And there's a very famous program called Lullan Top. I don't know if you know about this Lullan Top. It's a very, very famous program. And he quit India today to join the Indian Express. And he's going to do journalism, print in Hindi. So I am extremely hopeful because I think that the day if we give up hope, what is the point? I mean, life is full of hope. And, I am a person of faith. I write about it in the book. Any faith. It's not this faith as in faith in my work, faith in your work, faith in other people, what they are doing. And when I'm stuck, I put it out in the universe. And I'll just conclude it one last. When I don't know what to do, I ask the universe, saying, I am stuck, I'll put it out. I was in Bhubaneswar at the Lit Fest recently, and there was a lady in the audience. I don't want to say her position. She's extremely highly placed in the Maharashtra government, very, very senior bureaucrat. And she would say that she gets these phone calls from ministers saying, do this, do that. And she would say, no, I can't. Please phone somebody else. And she said, I can't do it. And her husband told her, don't become a whistleblower, but you don't have to do everything you have to do. So she said she's not been transferred and posted. Coming back to, it's very difficult to bribe women. It's very difficult to tell a woman beyond a point that if you don't do this, I'll do this. So that's the point I wanted to make about faith and hope.
I wanted to pick up on the point of faith and just having faith in what you're doing, building a tough shell, knowing that it feels hopeless and you're going to get threats, you're going to get, you're going to get trolled, especially today, you're going to get the nastiest. And I think as women, there is like a level of ad hominem attack that male journalists perhaps don't get. So there's misogyny in the notes and in the sort of, hostile emails and things that you get. But you really have to, for me, that is almost evidence that my work is reaching people and affecting people, if angering people. As long as I'm true to my sources and as long as I have faith in what I do, no matter how hard and bleak things seem, you just have to carry on. And that's why you enter the profession. Some of us might have been like very wide-eyed when we did. At least I was. I don't know. And I still am. And I think you have to be because, as Chitra said, I mean, if you don't have hope, you might as well go home or go to your grave.
Well, as a young journalist, I'm very happy to hear that all of the veteran journalists are hopeful still. We have about 15 minutes, so I can open up early for some questions. If you don't have questions, then I have more questions. So, okay, we have one in the front.
Hi, ma'am. I'm Neeti. I'm also a young journalist, so you are a dream panel for me. So my question is about the journalism industry. So, at least when in J school, we were taught all the ethics came from U.S. journalism, and the First Amendment right was there for them to speak the truth. We have smaller Indian startups like News Minute doing these very investigative reports. But why does the larger American medias are they not able to do these, real stories about Epstein Files? We see a little bit of virtue signaling from, say, a CNN, but all the other medias are farther and farther to the right. Why is that happening in the US media now?
May I answer? Can I answer? So the question is, thank you for your kind words about the News Minute and News Laundry. Why is it not happening with the big people? Because they are captured. Why do we say that subscribe to us? Because we don't accept money from corporates or from politicians or from governments. That gives us the freedom to write what we want. I just said earlier, we're always in trouble. We're constantly being raided or whatever. So you have to pay to keep news free. And I don't see all the big guys. They are so entrenched in corruption. It is straight corruption. So to answer your question, why don't the big guys do it? Because they simply can't. All their hands, legs, and eyes and everything is tied in money.
Interesting conversation. My question is very simple. Maybe I joined late, maybe you covered it earlier. How much has the social media been a shot in the arm in your pursuit as investigative journalists?
I'm glad these questions are about journalism because that's what I also want to talk about.
How much has
Social media has been a shot in the arm, you said, for journalism.
you mean in terms of like
For investigative
For
journalism.
investigative journalism.
In terms of the immediacy of the news, from which there is no escape after that. Once it is posted, it is there for the world to see. And I think the dots have just to be connected by investigative journalism.
Or maybe like what have been the positives and negatives of how social media has affected our work?
social media is a fount of useful and fake information, and to sift through it all is very, very time consuming. I will say that it does serve as an early warning system for certain things. If you're willing to mine through the depths of Reddit, for instance, there's like a Reddit something about some subtopic, and there could be a bit of gold, that will help you then build an investigation around. But it also, it's something that we're competing against because social media, again, someone sees something, you can do an eyewitness video and it's out there. But if you're with an organization, a credible one, you have to verify that video. It takes time. You might not be able to verify it and not run it, and you lose kind of that audience, you lose that news moment, which then becomes a business and financial issue as well, because we need eyeballs, we need people to come to our websites, we need people to pay for our journalism. And so I would say that it's again, positives and negatives, and it's just a matter of how you choose to use it. I will say that it helps with brand building, and this is important today because again, there are a lot of journalists. There are good ones, there are bad ones. There are people who, kind of advertise their work. There are people who can be found through social media who are perhaps not that self-promotional. So there are lots of ways in which I think social media can help sources find journalists as well.
Yeah.
And, because we, at least, and I'm sure for you guys too at the Washington Post, we're encouraged to put as much of our social media information as we feel comfortable about so that people can reach us. And that has actually helped quite a bit. But yeah, on the flip side, I mean, I think I talked about just the toxicity that is directed at you, both publicly and privately, if you do a piece of news that people don't agree with, or people, think you're lying or fabricating.
May I? May I answer that? May I come in? Yeah, to answer your question about how social media has helped, it's right. I mean, you have to be careful because not everybody who has an iPhone is a journalist. There's a verification that has to happen. But in my case, if I had had social media when I was working, my stories were blocked by my editor, Mr. N. Ram, because he was, using it. He had become a power broker with the government. So had I had social media, then I would not have depended on either Mr. N. Ram or Mr. Arun Shourie, both of whom are blocking my stories. So today, what social media is helping us do, and I speak from what we are experiencing, is that it's helping us to build communities, amplification. Once your editor has verified, once you've been through the process of verification, and you know that your story is solid, if a source finds you or you do good stuff, then you share the information. And that is a very good thing that's happening, which in the big media, they don't share. Today, to protect ourselves and to put the information out, there's a lot of sharing that's going on. Journalists are building communities. And I think that's a huge, huge plus point with the social media. And of course, you have to be careful. You can't just run off with a story just because someone is taking a picture. So pluses and minuses.
Yeah.
There's one here.
Thank you for such a fantastic panel. I have a question. A few months ago, Elon Musk was thundering from his platform that the names of some very, very influential people, including that of the US president, is in Epstein Files. And then there was radio silence. And now, we have this whole geopolitical theater of, the need to annex Greenland, how it's a matter of grave national security and all that. So do you think it's a sheer coincidence or the political equivalent of jingling your keys to distract the toddler?
I had trouble hearing.
What was the last
Can you
part?
condense and
No,
say
the
it a
last
bit louder?
part that you said. What was the last sentence?
Yeah, I said, is it just a sheer coincidence or the political equivalent of jingling your keys to distract the toddler?
Political equivalent of?
Jingling your keys to distract the toddler.
Or to distract the audience, what you said earlier about the Epstein files, this is the biggest conspiracy in the United States, Epstein Files. It is it's on par with the JFK assassination. It is on par with the 9/11 conspiracy theories, massive conspiracy theories here. And nobody has really addressed that. I mean, they talked about it at the time, but it's really not been fleshed out fully. Why is it such a huge conspiracy theory across United States? Across United States, not just the MAGA crowd, but all over. And there are about 3 reasons for this. Do you know that in the United States, every second, 3 documents are classified? Every second. Okay, now we know there's a lot of national security documents. What are all the other documents? There are a lot of documents that are classified to protect people in power. Now, the reason why there is this conspiracy theory across United States regarding Epstein and his client list, so to speak, these, presidents and other, important people, there are 3 factors, basically. Number one, when he was first convicted as a sex offender, he got 18 months. He was supposed to be in jail for 18 months. He was let out in 13 months. Within 13 months, he was let out. But what happened was that he was allowed to go every day to his office and back. Which sex offender in the world is allowed such privileges? And then after that, he leaves in 13 months. And then what happens is that there is this prosecutor in Florida who gives him a special deal, a sweetheart deal, where he is protected from immunity by the court cases sent by the victims. Nobody has ever got a deal like that. So therefore, there is the sense that he has, done all this. The second reason, when Epstein died, the way he died is absurd. Now, I hope none of you all have had the misfortune of seeing a hanging. Nobody who's hanged to death, is in that state that he was found in. This is making a fool of the public. He was found kneeling on the ground. You cannot kneel on the ground and die by hanging. You have to, your legs have to be above, your feet has to be above the ground. The guards who were there, they are supposed to, by law, they are supposed to circle around his room every 30 minutes. They had not done that. They had gone to sleep. There is record that they have gone to sleep. Then they falsify the record. The camera that is facing his room is malfunctioned. He has a roommate. He has an Italian roommate. That guy was sent out somewhere or the other. He was all alone that night. So like this, there are a series of things. No photograph was taken as soon as this body was found, which by law protocol, you have to do that. So this has led to a series of questions, none of which have been, answered properly. And out of the 10 people who are his accomplices, Ghislaine, she is in the jail. There is another guy. We don't know who the others are. There was one other guy. He was, in a Paris jail. The last point on which, lots of files have been released now. So many important ones are redacted or in black. Mm-hmm. What good are these papers, releasing these papers? What good is it? So these are the things which has to be addressed, why all of America feels this, there have not been any answers. And this is not the first time that people are protected people are shielded for committing a crime, which is having girls who are underage, having sex with girls who are underage is a crime. And all of them would be behind bars. So that is the reality of it, that this is a situation and it is not going to go away very soon. Releasing, photographs about Clinton is not going to help as far as this is concerned. And the last thing is that as far as Greenland is concerned and whether it's a distraction, I don't think so. Trump has said again and again that he wants Greenland. He wants Greenland for X, Y, and Z. His reasons change. He wants it. Now, the thing is, he has said right now that he will not, take it by force. That's what he has said. He probably will change it. But right now, as matters stand, for the last 1 month, we have seen a pattern of behavior. He wants Greenland. The only thing is, if he takes Greenland, the Western NATO alliance, which is the greatest military alliance, they say, in the history of the Earth, that collapses. And that has severe repercussions. So we will see. It's, one day at a time with regard to Trump.
The question I have is that the association between Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump didn't come from 2024. There were whisperings about it long before. But even then, at the 2024 election, he won with the popular vote as well as the Electoral College. What does it say about the preference of the voters? The scandals in which Trump has been accused of is innumerous. He's been caught giving hush money to ex-porn stars, things like that. So will you say or will you agree that a second Trump presidency was also caused due to the failure in the part of media to show his true colors to the world?
It depends on what you mean by true colors, because, Trump is a multifaceted, unpredictable leader with authoritarian tendencies, and those are hard things necessarily to quantify. And if you're going to try to narrow things down without evidence to back things up, which is why the stories we're writing now, I think, are becoming more, because we have more evidence. So you're writing more specific stories so that you can, because you have. So I guess what I'm saying is the media, it's hard for the media always, especially with an unpredictable leader, to anticipate where things are going to go. And then even if you know, and even if everyone you're talking to is saying something, that doesn't mean you can write it. The burden of even one word that you're saying, that you're printing, is very high. And so I think journalists struggle with this all the time. I'm sure all of you do, that this information, how do how do you run it? So like when something happens and you're like, I knew this, but I just didn't have. And that's not because I'm good enough or I'm not good enough. It's just because sourcing, getting people to trust you, talk to you, risk their lives for you is incredibly tough. And I think the media in general, mainstream media, work under a lot of deadline pressures as well. And so there's just like a multiple, and the fact that despite all of this, there has been so much written and so much of it that I think is going to help us assess what the future is going to look like. Is something that I'm proud of as a member of the media.
Can I say something?
It's not up to me, but maybe something quick.
I'll be very quick.
Yeah.
I think something is going to give. I don't think that this can continue. Already there is a lot of pushback on his Gaza peace thing. Norway has said no. Italy has said no. I think something is going to give. So keep the hope.
Great. Thank you so much for the wonderful questions. And I hope you enjoyed the panel. And thank you to our panelists.